Hi, welcome to the Fitting Formation. This is Brandon.
And this is Jared. And continuing on our team countdown for the offseason, we're on to the Miami Dolphins. And we're on pick 13. Even
13.
though the draft is over with, it was last week. And so it'll kind of give us a little bit better um, information on their offseason and how they're going to look going into the season, more or less. Free agency is
hmm
over with, the draft's over with. So these teams are kind of getting their roster set before training camp starts. But on to the Miami Dolphins. They started in 1965, so 59 years ago. Their first season was in 1966 with the AFL, so pre-merger. They were founded by Joe Robbie, if that kind of rings a bell to me, because they played in Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami.
Okay.
Do you remember that,
Okay.
Joe
Yeah.
Robbie Stadium?
Okay.
And then Danny Thomas. So those were the founders. Their overall record is 504, 408, and 4. So they're plus 100, or almost plus 100 in the
Yeah.
win column, which is pretty impressive,
Yeah,
actually.
that's good. Yep.
Um, they have 25 playoff appearances, but here's the kicker: they only have 6 in the 2000s.
Wow.
So in 24 seasons, they've only had 6 playoff appearances. So that kind of shows you. And this will go into like division championships. They have 13 division championships, and it's 70, 1971, 72, 73, 74, 79, 81, 83, 84, 85, 92, 94, and then 2000 and 2008. So 70s, a lot of 70s, a lot of 80s. Um, you can probably guess why in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
Don Shula was the head
Yeah. Don
coach,
Shula,
and the years that they went undefeated and all those teams, and then the 80s, you probably can guess why.
Dan Marino.
And Marino. And after that, it's kind of
After
after
that,
yeah, it
it's
is.
because of Tom Brady.
It is, yes.
That's why they never
It
were able to
is,
win a
yes.
division in there.
They have 5 conference championships: 71, 72, 73, 82, and 84. They have 2 Super Bowl victories: 1972 Super Bowl 7. They beat Washington Redskins. They were the Redskins at the time, 14-7, and that is famous because that was the only undefeated season in the NFL history. They
72.
finished, yeah,
Yep.
they finished 14-0 regular season, and then throughout the playoffs, they ended up with a 17-0 record. Patriots flirted with that a couple of years ago, or probably 10 plus years ago now.
hmm
But ended up losing the Super Bowl. The famous thing is whenever the last unbeaten team gets beaten, they always have like the 72 Dolphins have like that social media stuff of
Yep.
popping champagne and stuff like that, celebrating. So
Yep.
that
They
was cool.
celebrate.
Go back to 72. Then they won it again in 73, Super Bowl 8. They beat the Minnesota Vikings 24-7. Retired numbers, they have 3. Number 12, Bob Greasy, quarterback, 67 to 1980. 13, Dan Marino, quarterback, 83 to 99. And then Larry Zonka, fullback,
Mm.
1968 to 74. And then again, 79. They do have 2 numbers that aren't officially retired, but they don't issue them out to players. Can you guess? Recent, pretty recent.
Really?
Yeah, as far as 2000.
Hmm. Um, I'm drawing a blank, man.
54,
Oh, Zach Taylor and
ni-
Jason.
99.
Yeah, Jason Taylor.
Zach Thomas and
Zach
Jason Taylor.
Thomas.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so they're not officially retired, but they don't issue those numbers out to any
Okay.
players.
I should have
So
had that. Should have had that. Those
um,
guys were
they were,
awesome.
yeah. Now
Yep.
I got to assume that sometime in the near future, those numbers will probably be officially retired.
hmm
They have 11 Pro Bowl or Pro Football Hall of Famers. Paul Warfield, or wide receiver, 70 to 74. Larry Zonka, fullback. Jim Langer, center, 70 to 79. Bob Greasy, Larry Little, guard, 60 to 9 to 1980. Dwight Stevenson, center, 1980 to 87. Nick Bucciati, linebacker, 1967 to 74, and again in 76. Dan Marino. Jason Taylor, defensive end, 1997 to '07, and then again in '09, and then again in 2011. So he's had 3 stints with the Dolphins. I'm
Yeah.
not sure where he went in between, but he keeps on coming back. Zach Thomas, linebacker, 96 to '07, and then Don Shula's in the Hall of Fame as a head coach. He was there from 1970 to 1995.
Yeah, that's cool because we just mentioned him on our Colts one.
Yep.
I didn't realize he was even with the Colts, and
Yeah.
he was there from like 61 to
I
69.
right. I didn't either
So
until I kind of broke this down, and I was like, oh, because
pretty crazy.
he has the all-time wins record. And then when I was breaking it down, I was like, these wins don't add up. And then I was like, oh, he was with the Colts for 6 or 7 years before.
Yep.
All-time statistical leader is passing. Obviously, Dan Marino. He finished with 61,361 yards, which ranks ninth all-time. At the time that he retired, he had over 40 passing records, all-time records.
Yeah.
Obviously, Tom Brady and Drew Brees and some of those guys have kind of beat him. But
Manning.
at the time, he was the first. I think this. Ooh, I can't. I didn't write down the year, but he was the first quarterback in NFL history to pass for 5,000 yards in a season, and the first quarterback to ever throw for over 40 passing touchdowns in a season.
Yeah.
So I mean, he had multiple years in there to where he was just kind of letting it rip. Um,
And that yards, like the season yards, like passing yards, he held that till what, like 2008?
yeah, I think so.
That's crazy.
Yep. Rushing, or he leads. He's number seventh all time in passing touchdowns with 420. Rushing is Larry Zonka, 6,737 yards, and then also touchdowns, 53. Receiving is Mark Duper, 8,869 yards, and then touchdowns is Mark Clayton with 81. I was kind of surprised with Dan Marino having, and then Bob Greasy being there as well. Bob Greasy was pretty much number two on all the lists, but
Hmm.
as many passing yards as those two had combined, there wasn't really like a standout receiver.
Right.
It was just a whole bunch of like just random guys that had like 8,000, 7,000, 600,000 yards, and it was like you would have thought somebody in there would have had like over 10,000 and
Oh heck yeah.
been a stud. But
And what?
I've never heard of Mark Duper before.
No, and did he play in the Dan Marino era or the
I believe
Greasy
so.
era?
I can't remember,
Hmm.
but only having 800 or 8,869 yards, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I
crazy.
would have
Because
thought.
yeah, that was a. I mean, because Bob Greasy was actually really good,
Uh-huh.
and so isn't his kid Brian Greasy
Mhm.
the one?
Yep.
Yeah, he was the first our first round pick from the
Yep.
Broncos.
Yep. Defensively, Zach Thomas is the all-time tackles leader with 1,042. Jason Taylor is the sacks, 131 sacks, and then Jake Scott, 35 INTs. Other notable players, just going through their list, it was like a whole bunch of guys, and I guess it makes sense when growing up, watching football in the early 2000s, probably late 90s, early 2000s is when they weren't very good. That was towards the end of Dan Marino's career, so
Hmm.
up until now. But you had Ryan Tannehill was a quarterback, Dan Strock was a quarterback. They had Ricky Williams, Ronnie Brown, Mercury Morris, Lamar Miller. Mark Clayton was one of a wide receiver name that I
Hmm.
kind of rang some bells a little bit.
Right.
Nat Moore, Chris Chambers, O.J. McDuffie, Rashad Jones, Brian Cox, Channing Crowder, Cameron Wake, Patrick Surtain, the dad, not the one that plays for the
Right.
Broncos, and then Xavier Howard. So,
Oh yeah.
um, like I said, I there's not wasn't a whole lot of names that rang bells that actually played for more than like one season there. They had a couple of guys that were there for like one offs, but
Yeah.
these guys were. I try to find guys that were there for multiple seasons.
You
They
didn't put Richie Incognito on there, man.
I totally forgot about Richie Incognito. Dang it!
Yeah. I just thought about
Oh
that too. That was
man,
a big deal, wasn't
yeah,
it?
it was.
Bullying players and
Yep.
stuff. Made that big old guy cry.
I forgot about that. I should have did offensive line because they had one of the Pouncey brothers too, didn't they?
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Hmm.
The Pouncey brothers were actually really good. Head coaches, they've had 14 head coaches. Their first head coach, George Wilson, he was there from 1966 to 69. He finished with a 15 and 39 and 2 record. Obviously, the big one is Don Shula. He was there for 392 games. He was 257 and 133 and 2, which puts him, he's the all-time winningest head coach with 328 regular season games won, and then 347 total with combined playoffs, which I thought Brian or Bill Belichick was kind of teetering, getting there pretty close. Did he
Uh-huh.
ever break 300?
I'm not sure, but
Not
yeah, I
either.
thought he was kind of getting
But
close
I
too.
think he was number two. But it's just crazy to be there for 25 years, 392 games, and to be that successful. I mean, to have
Right.
a plus 120 winning record is pretty wild. Other notable head coaches after, do you know who the head coach was after Don Shula left? Pretty famous.
Pretty famous.
Yeah.
Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy Johnson, yep. He
Yep.
was there for 4 seasons. He was 36 and 28, so he had a winning record, pretty good. After him,
I don't know.
Dave Wanstead.
Oh
He was
yeah.
there for
Okay.
5 years. He actually
Wow.
had a pretty good record too. He was 42 and 31.
Wow.
Who's after Dave Wanstead?
Man,
Nick Saban. You remember the Nick Saban
Oh
era?
yeah, did he even make it 2 seasons?
Not quite. I think he made it a season and a half because he was there from '05 and then halfway through '06. I think he was
Yeah,
15 and 17, so he wasn't.
wasn't
It wasn't
terrible.
terrible. It wasn't like he was.
Well, that was after LSU, huh?
Yep,
He went.
LSU, and then he left Dolphins to go to Alabama, and that was. I mean, he's
Yeah,
pretty well
he
known.
did
He
okay
did all
there, I
right. Yeah.
guess.
Um, uh, One of their interim head coaches was Dan Campbell. I don't know if you remember that. I actually kind of remember that. 'Cause I remember when they hired Dan Campbell as an interim. I can't remember who the head coach was, but like, geez, look at this guy. Holy cow, he's like 6'5",
Oh, Jack.
jacked. I was like, geez, tight end coach.
Yep.
He was actually 5-7 as an interim coach. Brian Flores was there. He was there from 2019 to 2021. He was 24 and 25, so he had a 500 record.
Hmm.
The infamous thing about him was that there was a whole bunch of. I think he ended up suing the NFL, right?
Right.
For he claimed the owner Stephen Ross was trying to make him throw games to
Get a
and
first round pick
pick, and then
or
trying to
first
get
overall pick or
trying to
whatever.
get Tom Brady to come to Miami and stuff like that. It was kind
Yep.
of funny. He ended up suing him. He's still in the NFL. He's a really good defensive coordinator. And then Mike McDaniel, president, head coach from 2022. He is 28 and 23. So a lot of these head coaches, and it just tracks with their overall record, is a lot of these guys just have winning records.
Hmm.
So you want to be kind of a successful head coach, maybe not successful, but at least be on the better side of 500. You go to Miami and be a head coach. And not you don't want to win any playoff games anymore. But
Yeah.
front office wise, Stephen Ross is their owner. He's been there since 2009. GM is Chris Greer, and then special advisor. He's been there for a while, but Dan Marino is a special advisor to the president, CEO, and owner.
Oh, is he?
Yep, I didn't
Oh,
realize that
I
either.
didn't know that.
And so that kind of takes us into current day. I don't know. But the Miami Dolphins, I like what they have. It's just I don't know. Kale would probably be a little bit better because just looking at them on paper, especially offensive wise, it was like they have the names, and I think it all just relies on Tua being healthy
Right.
for the most part. Because when he's healthy, like 2 years ago, he pretty much stayed healthy all season after the season where he had all the concussions. I think he led the league in passing yards and maybe touchdowns, and then Tyreek Hill had like 1,700 yards, and Jalen
Hmm.
Waddle is a solid number two. Devon A. Chain, as long as he can stay healthy, he was a steal. I think he was let's see, he was a third round pick in 23.
Hmm.
I had him as my number 10. I think everybody had him on their top 10 running backs list.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I really like him. Same thing with him as long as he can stay healthy. Their big thing, and just talking with Kel, I think he's pretty disappointed in their offensive line.
Yeah.
I think they have maybe one of the worst offensive lines, especially with the guy that just retired out of nowhere.
I don't know. We mentioned him before
Yeah,
too. I can't
and
remember.
he was young. I think he was
Yeah.
only like 30. which is-
Abraham? Is that, no.
I can't remember,
Yeah.
but that was kind of a shock. That doesn't help their cause because their weak link, especially on offense, was their offensive line. And then to have that guy just retire out of the blue.
Was there an Armstead? Like
I
that?
think that makes sense. Yeah.
I thought it was.
Yep.
Trying to think. Yeah.
But you look at their skill position players, and especially on offense, it's just like, man, they have the players.
Right.
I don't know. And
Right.
I
And
don't
that
know if
tight
it's.
end, Johnny Smith, he
Yep.
came on last year. He's been playing a long time, but he really like stepped up for him
He
big
did,
time,
yeah. Because
especially in the red zone.
Tyreek had a down year. Jalen Waddle had a down year. Devon A. Chain was one of their better receiving options, I think, last year. I think he was like third
Hmm.
in receiving or catches and yards. But I don't know. It kind of seems like the Dolphins, ever since McDaniel got there, they start off fast. They kind of got like this new age offense. They got all these new wrinkles that nobody's ever really seen. They're motioning Tyreek a lot and putting him in compromised positions for cornerbacks. He's kind of catching in space. They got speed with Devon A. Chain, and kind of seems like towards the back half of the last like, at least 3 years, teams have kind of figured them out,
Hmm.
and they don't have like the pivot that they can go to.
Right. And it kind of seemed like their answer for that to me, especially last season, was like bubble screens.
Yeah.
Let's just bubble screen the hell out of this whole game.
Yep.
Like I don't remember their quarterbacks, and granted they were working with some real bad quarterbacks there,
Yeah.
but I don't remember them throwing like any bombs. I
Mhm.
mean, I don't remember throws too much over 20 yards.
No.
Even 10 yards was kind of I know against the Niners, the only time that they really had any big throws was to Jonnu in the end zone, I
Right.
think. So, and that was even like 15 yards.
Yep.
So they bubble screened the hell out of people.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know, and then it's hard to kind of put a finger on Tyreek Hill. You don't know. I don't know, dude. That guy's always doing something crazy. It seems like, or he's always in the news.
Hmm.
I don't know. I kind of liked him coming out of Kansas City. I liked his, his speed and the way he played wide receiver and kind of the showmanship or showboating or whatever you want to show it.
Yep.
I thought I liked that kind of stuff, but man, the guy cannot stay out of the news. It's not good news either. So,
Yeah. And now he wants out of there. At
yeah,
least that's the last I heard. Maybe they reconciled, but I
right.
know that was right after the season. But he was basically like, "Yeah, I'm done." Basically with Miami, I haven't heard anything official,
I haven't
but
either. I don't know. The guy kind of slowly turning into an Antonio Brown, maybe. I don't
right,
know.
took too many hits, maybe.
Right. Defensively, I don't. I I know Kel didn't like the draft, but when I pull up the depth chart, the three names that are bubbled in for the top three spots at nose tackle are the three guys that they drafted. So they don't have anybody else because they play a traditional 3-4. So they really needed a nose tackle.
Hmm.
So they drafted that Kenneth Grant in the first round from Michigan. I really like that pick. I think he's going to be solid. I think he was a little bit more bigger version than who was the guy that went to the Browns? The other Michigan guy, Mason Graham.
Mason.
Mason Graham. He's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit more of like a your traditional nose tackle 0-1 technique. So Kenneth Grant. And then they drafted that Jordan Phillips in the fifth round, and then that Zeke Biggers in the seventh round. So that's your nose tackle.
So they didn't have anybody there, so they
No.
pretty much just shored that up.
Yep. Um, they still have the. I mean, they drafted Chop Robinson number one or in the first round last year. They really didn't lose anybody on defense. They still have Ramsey.
I think they lost a couple of DBs.
Yep, they did. They picked up the safety from Detroit. I can't pronounce his name. I'm not even gonna try. And then they got
So in the draft.
no
Oh.
Detroit. They picked up free safety free agent
Oh,
from Detroit, the
okay.
Lions, and then they picked up a free safety from the New York Jets, Ashton Davis. But other than that, they got everybody's returning. They got Bradley Chubb returning, Jordan Brooks, Chop Robinson, Jalen Phillips, Zach Seiler, Benito Jones. I don't know. And they got their. I kind of forgot about this just looking at it, but their defensive coordinator came from Baltimore, so maybe another year in the system with um, kind of bringing that Baltimore defense or Baltimore idea system to Miami. Maybe a second year because I thought they played pretty well defensively towards the end of the year. It kind of seemed like.
Mhm. Yeah, they started coming on a little bit better.
That was more, I think, impressive than what their offense was doing towards the end of the year. I thought that was more of a plus side on them, but I don't know. Like we talked, it kind of seems like I don't know. They're just like the new fad when the season starts because Mike McDaniel's good at scheming up new plays and putting wrinkles in there. He just doesn't have the pivot. I don't know. I like their players though. I like Jalen Waddle as the number two. I think he's a solid number two, one of the better, probably number twos in the league.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's why it was so shocking last year. He just
yeah,
really didn't have a good season.
yeah, I know because he was on my fantasy team and he was
Yeah, I had him
pissing me
too.
off. Jeez.
Yep, I had him at one point as well.
Zach Wilson's there. He's the
Yep.
backup now. They
They've
drafted,
definitely improved in
yeah,
their quarterback room.
yeah, and
That's for
drafting
sure.
Quinn Ewers. I like Quinn Ewers. I was
Yep.
surprised he dropped to the seventh round.
Mhm.
I know he didn't have the greatest um, season statistically in Texas, but
Right.
um, if Arch Manning really is that good and he couldn't beat out Quinn Ewers, what does that say about Quinn Ewers? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like obviously, if Arch Manning was that much better than Quinn Ewers, he probably would have been starting, especially the run that they made in the playoffs.
Right.
But Quinn Ewers never gave it up. I remember watching. I think it was the wasn't the Ohio State game, but the team that they played before. Who did they play before in the playoffs? Anyway, but I was impressed. He made some pretty gutsy close, or maybe it's Boise State. No, it wasn't Boise State.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Arizona State. Arizona
Oh,
State made a little bit of
okay.
run. Quinn Ewers, I thought he played really well um, as far as under pressure because they kind of had it in the bag, and then Arizona State was making this push, and I think they ended up tying it up or even taking the lead, and Quinn Ewers just drove right down there. And then they even took Ohio State to the brink. They had a chance to go in there and tie it, and that's when he took the sack and fumble from Jack Sawyer and Jack
Yeah.
Sawyer. But I was surprised that Quinn Ewers fell to the 7th round. I was
Oh, absolutely.
kind of surprised where a lot of those quarterbacks fell, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
was
know.
thinking like third or fourth round for
Right.
Quinn Ewers.
Yep.
And I knew that there was some quarterbacks like Jalen Milroe and
Mhm.
Shook and all those guys who would go Shook or whatever, however you pronounce his
Yeah.
name. I knew those guys were going to go above him, but I didn't think he was going to be that far behind him.
Right.
I think they got a pretty good value with that pick, and my favorite pick of theirs was the one they got in the second round at 37. I like that the
Oh
guard
yeah.
from Arizona,
Yep.
Sylvia Nea, what is it,
Yeah. Jonah.
Jonah, and I think that I think their offensive line is going to be much improved
I
with
think
that
so.
guy.
Yep.
He was the top one of the top three
Yep.
guards. I feel like, and so I think that their offensive line is going to be much improved with him on there. Now, I
Mhm.
don't know if it's going to be enough, but it's got to be better.
Right.
So
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to pin on it. If they stay healthy, I kind of like them. I kind of like them being a playoff team. If Tua can stay healthy and shoot, just 2 years ago he was a 5,000 yard. I think he threw for over 5,000
it
yards.
was if it was close
It
if he
was,
did, and
yeah,
their offense was
right.
explosive.
And then they got into the playoffs and they had to play Kansas City in like negative 20-degree weather, and they just looked like a team. They really did look like a team from Miami, but
Yeah, they scored like 9 points,
yeah,
9 points in that game, 6 points, something
yeah,
like that. It was bad.
they looked like a team that didn't want to play in the cold, and it was
Yeah.
like, so their best bet is to try to win the division, but
hmm
you play in a division with the Buffalo Bills, and it's just going to be tough for them. I think tough sledding. I don't know about the Jets. I do like what the Jets did in the draft. I like the Jets with Aaron Glenn. I think they're going to be much improved. Justin Fields is a kind of a wild card too, but
hmm
um, I don't know. Who else is in that division?
I think the Patriots got way
Patriots.
better.
They did. Yes,
They
Patriots
got
got better as
so
well.
much
Yeah.
better,
Yep.
and they pretty much, in my opinion, won the offseason
Yeah. I
altogether.
agree.
So I agree. This is a tough division, and the Jets, you never know.
Hmm.
They haven't been good, but they could come out and they could do something. The Dolphins are going to have to play really good to even try to win it. To be a playoff team, they weren't that far out this last season.
Yeah.
Uh, I think, like you said, it's all about health right now for them. And then even then, they're just such a tough division
Hmm.
that I really have a hard time seeing them winning over 10, 11 wins. It's hard for me just because of the division they're in.
Right.
I mean, like we were just talking with the Colts earlier on our other show that they're in a weak division. They have
Hmm.
every chance to. You put the Dolphins in that division,
Right.
I think they're going to probably win it. But they're in one of the harder ones,
They are.
and the Bills have proven that they know how to win, especially in those late months.
Hmm.
So
Well,
it's gonna be tough.
you just look at what the Bills and even the Jets already had a pretty solid defensive line with the Williams guy. Um,
Quinton
and then
Williams.
yeah, and then what the Patriots have done in the offseason with getting that Williams from the Philadelphia Eagles, that defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Was it Williams?
Um, Milton
Milton.
Milton
Yeah.
Williams. Is that it? Yeah.
And then that's all they pretty much spent their free agency on, was building up that defensive front, that front
Yep.
seven. And so with the Miami Dolphins having their weak link as the offensive line, it's just like, man, the three teams that they're vying for the division for have pretty solid defensive lines.
Right.
Especially what the Bills did. The Bills went and got Joey Bosa.
And they drafted hard on
They did,
on
yeah.
that defensive front too.
And so what your weak link is kind of like the strength of the other teams in the division. So I wouldn't be surprised if they finished last in the division.
hmm
I think they're going to be competitive. I think they just got enough firepower on offense that um, that'll keep them in it. Tua's probably not everybody's cup of tea. I don't know how Brady feels about him. Last time, or when we did a podcast with Brady, he was wearing a Tua jersey. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
know.
he's like everybody when he's healthy.
Yeah,
He's a fan, but
he is.
that dude, he goes and dives into
He
defensive
does.
players,
Yep.
even though he's concussion prone.
Hmm.
It's crazy.
And then not having the best offensive line, it's just like, man, I don't know. Like I said, I do like their firepower. They have, you know, I can see them averaging like 30 points a game just with how much firepower that they have. But their offensive line might hold them back, and if you can't block for Devon A Chain, it's not good. But there's just something in my mind that goes back to them posting 70-some points on the Denver Broncos just a couple years ago, and it was pretty much
Right.
the same roster. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing much different about it. That was Devon Achane, and they had Raheem Mostert, but
Yeah.
um,
And he is a
I,
departure,
he
but they
is,
went and
yeah.
got Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma
Uh,
State. Is that who they got as a running back in the draft?
they got him, but when one of that I really like is they picked up Alexander Mattinson from the Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I
okay.
really like him. Jalen Wright's
Yep.
still on the team, and they still have their fullback Alec Ingold, but Devon Achane will be the main horse now. So if he can stay healthy, he's a dual threat, just a
Yeah.
speedster. Um, yeah, I don't know. I can see them definitely finishing anywhere from 2 to 4 in that division. I think it's the Bills' division to lose. It will be until somebody knocks them off.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, the Patriots. I like the Patriots trajectory with Vrabel being there. Um, I like Drake May. I like the things that they've done with surrounding him with a really good defense. Um, some of the offensive alignment with the Will Campbell pick was really good.
That was
Get
huge.
you a solid tackle. Um,
Stephon Diggs, I
yep.
think, is coming in.
Yep.
And we'll see. If he can keep his mouth shut and just play some
That's
ball,
true. Yeah.
be good.
Yeah, that'll be good. To maybe having Vrabel as a head coach. Kind of
Yeah.
a hard ass, so kind of keep you in line. But I don't. The Dolphins, like I said, anywhere from 2 to 4 in that division. So
Yep.
probably, I mean, you can gauge it. I can see them picking 13th again with how many wins did they have? Probably 8.
I think they
9,
did 7.
7.
I think so.
So I think that might be their floor. I can see them 7 to 10 wins next year.
Mhm.
I think 10 might be their ceiling, maybe 11.
I think so too, just because that
Yeah.
division. Now, like we said though, if they're playing in a weaker division, because
Right.
they've got a team that can beat up on some of the bad teams.
Mhm.
And I don't know what their strength of schedule is, but just with the division,
Right.
it's tough. I can see them getting 4 losses in division.
I think the bad part is they finished with 7 or 8 wins, like you said, last year,
Mhm.
which put them second in the division because
Right.
the Jets finished worse and the Patriots finished worse. So
Yeah.
the way the schedule comes out is they always play like the number 2 teams in the divisions that they play. So they're not playing like the bottom dwellers in the divisions.
Right.
So
Okay.
they're not getting a weak schedule. I could probably I'm not sure who they play in, but they're not playing the worst teams in the divisions.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't ever realize that's how
Yep,
they did
that's
that.
how they
That's
do it, yeah.
awesome.
So that's
Yeah.
I knew that because that's what a lot of people for the Niners were saying. They're like, oh yeah, this will be like a good bounce back year because they finished last, so they'll get like the 4th seed in the divisions that they play. So they'll be
Mhm.
playing the worst teams in the division. Plus
Right.
they're getting everybody healthy back. So that's how I kind of figured it out.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, going back to because when you going through their history and you mentioned Brian Flores,
Mhm.
I remember I was carpooling with Kel. Man, we really actually should have had him on here. Sorry, Kel, we'll get you on here against time. But no, and I was carpooling with him, and we were talking about Brian Flores. We really liked him.
Yeah.
Like he liked him as a coach. I did too. He kind of cleared. He came in there, and the Dolphins just kind of cleared house. I think that was when they traded Laremy Tunsil and
Mhm.
got all those guys out of there, and they just had a really bad cap deal going on. And I mean, the guy come in there, and I thought even though I think that's why he ended up having like a 15-17 record. I think is
Mhm.
what he said.
Yep.
I think that's why it was kind of bad, was just because that first season was a rebuilding year from
It
hell.
was, yeah.
But yeah, if he didn't do that, like if he didn't have that controversy and all that stuff come up, I really think that he had them going the right way. I
He
really
did,
feel like
yeah.
he had them on the right direction and on the right track. But it is just so, like you were talking, it's just the Dolphins. Ever since Dan Marino left and everything, they've just been shooting themselves in the foot one
Mhm.
way or another. It just seems like something's always happening. And even with Mike McDaniel, like he has a great offensive mind, but he can't. He's got a quarterback that can't stay healthy,
Right.
and he doesn't invest in his offensive line.
Right.
So, I mean, I know a lot of these coaches out there that think they're just this great offensive mind. I think in a way that Kyle Shanahan is kind of the same way. He invests a lot more, obviously, than what Mike McDaniel does. But I think
Mhm.
he's just like thinks he's above that. He's like, no, I can work with whoever,
Right.
and I'll, I don't need a big offensive line.
Mhm.
I can work with whoever. But that's not the case, man. This is,
Right.
like you said, teams figure you out. This is the NFL. There's a lot of smart people all over the place.
Yep.
A lot of people know ball. So
Well, Miami's kind of in a unique spot too because of the division that they play in. They have to travel to Buffalo, which is an open air stadium, which I mean, they're constantly playing in snow and from October on.
yep.
Jets is an open air stadium. New England's an open air stadium, so they have at least 3 games every year that they're competing against, these teams that probably should be able to run the ball in those kind of conditions.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which,
Hmm.
but like you said, it kind of Mike McDaniel's coming from being with Kyle Shanahan his whole life, and Kyle Shanahan's never valued. I can't say never valued. I don't think the Niners' offensive line is that bad, but Kyle Shanahan would rather draft or I'm sorry, get free agent stars.
Nope.
And his offensive line rather than draft because I can't remember the last time Shanahan's been there for 7, 8 years. Can you name a offensive lineman that got a second contract that they drafted?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean,
Yeah,
because they let
McGlinchey left
yep.
before his they fifth yeared him, but he left after his fifth year to go to the
Hmm.
Broncos. Banks left. He was a second round pick.
Yeah.
Just everybody that they draft, they don't take into a second contract. They'd
Right.
rather Trent Williams was a big pickup. Those two centers that he ended up getting when he first came over that were pretty good. Um, I can't remember their names. One came from Atlanta.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I
Yeah.
can see him, but I can't think of the name either.
But yeah, and we've
It's a
talked.
philosophy that's just
It
like
is, yeah,
it's odd.
weird. And same thing happened this year in this draft. They picked up one offensive lineman in the
Yep.
fifth, sixth round, seventh round,
Hmm.
whatever it was. It's just weird. And then you look at teams like Detroit and Philadelphia, and it's just they're constantly drafting these offensive linemen where they don't need them, but it's just like okay, we're going to develop these guys. We got really good offensive line coaches,
Hmm.
and we're just going to develop these guys. And whenever one of our guys wants to move on, we'll just plug this guy in.
Right.
I don't know. It's weird.
It is, and then I just had to look at that guy's name again, the Sylvia
Hmm.
Jonah. That was a huge pickup, and I think a lot of people saw them going, a lot heavier on the offensive
Hmm.
line for the Dolphins, but they still, I mean, that was I think their only lineman, that offensive lineman they drafted,
It was, yep.
and so where it was a need, I mean, they did end up getting some secondary help, but where that seemed like a pretty big need, and your quarterback constantly getting hurt, the
Yep.
same philosophies. It's like I don't know, man. If my quarterback was prone to concussions, if a gust of wind
Right.
blows on him hard enough, he's going to get concussed.
Yep.
But I would definitely invest in that offensive line. Yeah, I don't like the matchups like we talked about with the
Hmm.
other teams in that division. So I really don't expect a playoff appearance from them coming up. I do, like you said, they could be 2 through 4, but even if I don't think they're going to have enough wins to break into the playoffs, I definitely don't see
Right.
them winning the division. So, but yeah, this was good, man. That was a good breakdown. I like hearing about some of that stuff. That's crazy. I can't believe I totally forgot about Zach Thomas
Zach
and
Thomas,
Jace
yeah.
Taylor. That was a good one. That was good. Yeah, this is a great episode. Good deep dive. And yeah, let us know what you guys think. And thanks for listening.